Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Asana Cayetano. Good morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
It's the middle of March, the 15th.
Officially the middle. That's right. We're going to find out more about our weather and what we can expect. It's been warm, not very March-like, feels more like April.
Well, you know, every so often, you know, the wind and the breeze kind of dies down a bit and then you remember it's hot. But in the middle of March, we expected more, you know, gusty weather in terms of, you know, what we call kite season, right?
That's right. When was the last time you put a kite in the air?
In my, I wouldn't even say teens. I must have been like 10 years old.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Couple decades ago.
Yeah. And you know, the kids are home. It's a great time for them to teach them how to make it the traditional way.
Yeah, coconut straws.
Yeah, and plastic bags.
Yeah.
All right, but we got to get moving into our show. We're going to go ahead and just read our prepared forecast for this morning. So our general situation is for fair weather conditions to continue.
The 24-hour forecast calls for mostly sunny today and clear to partly cloudy tonight, with little or no rainfall expected.
All right, our winds are moving from the east to southeast at 10 to 20 knots, and that makes for a choppy sea state.
The outlook calls for similar conditions to continue on Tuesday and Tuesday night.
All right, and our high temperatures for today are going to be 88 along the coast, 93 inland, and 82 in the hills.
And our lows tonight is going to be 77 degrees along the coast, 70 degrees Fahrenheit inland, and 63 degrees Fahrenheit in the hills.
All right. And we want to thank our forecaster, Crystal Rosales, for providing that update for us. It's going to be a warm day. There is some winds coming in from the east, but at least we know that it's going to be dry. All right. We're going to keep things moving this morning with our eye opener, some motivation to get us started. And our eye opener for today goes like this. Stopping to feel a moment of gratitude for the miracles of life on earth can be what you need to shift your day. Most of us begin our days with a continuous list of things we need to do to keep our lives running smoothly. But we rarely take time to note all the things we don't need to do. For example, we don't need to figure out how to breathe. We don't need to find a way to make sure the earth continues to revolve around the sun. We don't need to concentrate to ensure that our heart beats and our cells regenerate. All of these things, and many more, take care of themselves without or having to think or do anything at all. This is the miracle of life on earth. As you take in your world, you might feel a moment of gratitude for the basic fact that once again, the sun has risen to illuminate the abundant earth, and the earth's gravitational field holds you and all that you hold dear in a tight, life-affirming embrace.
This is cool because when we wake up in the morning to start our day, we don't stop to sort of take in what we would call the natural things, right? Like the sunrise, like, you know, breath of fresh air, right? We often wake up in the morning and we have either mentally or written down somewhere a list of things that we need to accomplish for the day.
Yeah.
Perhaps in some instances it starts with making breakfast for the family, or, you know, ironing your clothes to get ready for work. Things that also happen instantaneously. You don't really think about it, it's just instinctive. But at the same time, just stopping and saying, you know what? I appreciate being able to, you know, see the sun come up in the morning and, you know, feel the wind or the breeze, you know, through the window or whatever it is that you stop and take a moment for. And then you realize that that never really stops.
Yeah.
That's like an everyday thing that we take for granted. And because of that, we don't take the moment or the opportunity to actually step aside and appreciate it and embrace it for what it is. We get enraptured and caught up in what we're doing with our list of, you know, assignments or our list of tasks or chores around the house or what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's also a really great eye-opener for the days when it really is hard to find things to be grateful for. And we all have them, and I think that, you know, given the level of struggle that we know people are living with, this is one of the things that you can just bring it back to the basics. And not even just the basics, like the fundamentals. You need life to be able to carry forward. You need the basic functions of your body. You need the existence that we have here on Earth, your gravitational pull, or so all of these things are so essential in our lives. And when it's really tough, because it can be sometimes, to find things to be grateful for, you can always go back to that.
But believe it or not, those are the very simple things that we often take for granted, right? It's like you don't even think about it because it happens so naturally, so instinctively that it's no longer even a thought.
We take it for granted.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and I think this year has been one just long life lesson of how we take things for granted. Did we ever think that a virus would spread across the globe and disrupt all of our lives the way it has?
Well, I'm glad you kind of touched on that in the context of the eye-opener, because for me it was more like last year. Like this year is more that breath of relief. For some reason, perhaps mentally, like we've gotten, or I speak for myself here, I've sort of gotten over the fear of the whole pandemic situation. And so in looking back to last year, that was the period of the unknown. Like a year ago around this time, everything was frenzied and everything was, you know, that when you look at where we are now, I'm doing a lot better in terms of accepting what has taken place over the past 12 months.
That's true. That's true. I didn't think of it that way, and I think that you're absolutely right. When we were just all set in panic as to when it's going to happen, if it's going to happen, how bad it's going to be, versus now where we still have, unfortunately, lost over 300 Belizeans, but we are now starting to see a shift as we see. I think it's almost 10,000 Belizeans that have been vaccinated so far. And we're getting to a place now where we know that some people, and especially our loved ones who are most vulnerable, can be safe.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our eye-opener for this morning. And there's a lot that we have to get into in recapping the news from the weekend and what we have looking forward. So let's get moving into Eye on the News.
So I want to acknowledge a few things without putting particular emphasis on what has happened and the myriad of questions that come along with what we're seeing, particularly in the social media space at this point in time. I'm certain that a majority of people who are on Facebook or who have WhatsApp or any other application that allows you to be able to transfer images and information are aware of the viral spread of a series of videos over the weekend. And it has to do with what appears to be the torturing of an individual. Now, the circumstances are yet to be investigated by the Belize Police Department. We only want to acknowledge that we are aware of what happened and we will be looking into it. And there are a lot of questions surrounding this whole ordeal. Some people are saying that it appears to be an individual who is a minor that is being tortured. And so like I said, there are a lot of questions, but I think what we want to discuss in light of the spread of this video is where we are as a society and the level of comfort that we have put into criminality, right? Where persons are wantonly committing certain acts without thought or consideration of what happens thereafter, repercussion, even retaliation in some cases if that were the case, right? But like I'm saying, we're looking at a situation where persons do these things, persons go online and say certain things unabashedly without any thought of what's to happen next or what's to happen to the families or the other persons who are affected by the action being taken.
Yeah, well, affected, definitely. I can see that one. But I think one of the things that the video did trigger for me was a recognition of how there seems to be a complete disregard for consequences. The act itself is one that baffled the wider society. The level of violence and hatred involved in the act. But it was also the fact that these young men, and 2 men have been charged as a result of the videos, felt comfortable enough going live on social media, sharing what they were doing with a broader population. And, you know, I always tell people, you may think that you have protection or privacy set up on your social media. You really don't. Because the minute you open that up to one more person, you're opening it up to the public because they have a broader extension as well. But the disregard for the fact that what they were doing was completely illegal, but that they were comfortable just getting online and sharing this type of post. Naturally, as it is something that, you know, has been circulating, the persons were identified, and in fact, we do have an update from the police department that they have charged 2 people, but it really shows a lot about where we are, and again, I go back to it, this complete disregard for whether or not there'd be consequences.
And it's a very graphic and jarring image for anyone to sit and watch. I mean, it was a talk of most people you come across over the course of the weekend who, for whatever reason, saw it or heard about it. But it's just the graphic nature of, you know, what transpired there. It's shocking.
And you're right. We don't know the full extent as to the reasons behind. There's a lot of speculation at this time. That's part of what I'm sure police are investigating. But it is, as we said, the update is that they have arrested 2 persons who were involved. I think for attempted murder and attempted kidnapping and wounding.
And so the other thing that I briefly wanted to touch on was another incident that happened over the course of the weekend that prompted the service providers for those who deal in the business of emergency management and emergency response, where a woman reportedly lost her life over the weekend while several attempts were being made for emergency medical response to render assistance, right? And it has, like I said, prompting the Belize emergency response team to come forward and share or reiterate the procedures that one should follow in a case of emergency. The numbers to call, providing the requisite information in terms of location, what the injuries are, if there are certain injuries, or what the symptoms or signs are, if it's of another nature, and these types of things. But it opens up a broader conversation, Marlene, in terms of how we go about treating with emergencies and how we go about responding to these types of situations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's put it in context here. So someone went on social media saying that they called 911 to get help for a loved one who was in distress.
Yeah.
The person subsequently died in the time that it took for all the turnaround for getting emergency services to their home. There's also a discussion about a cost being associated with rendering the service based on where they live. So there are multiple issues here. I know the one, I've seen the response from Bert, and I know we had it up on the screen just a bit ago. They're focusing primarily on the call and where it is placed. This is interesting, Isani. We were talking about it before because this is not the first time that this issue has come to light. And I would imagine and I hope that there are some corrective measures being put in place. In fact, most of the time when we speak with BERT, which is a private entity, they say, don't call 911, store the number directly for the ambulance service in your area so that you can call us directly. Because the 911 system is a dispatch system.
Yeah.
So I call you, and then you call the relevant services that are necessary. Now, I know you said earlier, you know, it's in the midst of an emergency, remembering or finding your phone to get the number for a direct ambulance may not be the first thought for many. And I think that's a valid point.
You're in the middle of nowhere, and I used this example earlier. There's a road traffic accident or there's an incident that just took place, and you're in the middle of nowhere. Instinctively, the numbers you are trained to dial or conditioned to dial, 911. You're not thinking, what's the number for the local police station in my area? You're not thinking, what's the number for the, you know, an ambulance or the fire station? You automatically think, because everywhere it's almost universal in a manner of speaking, that 911 is the emergency response number. And so that is what creates a problem in most cases, because like I said, we are trained to think, okay, something happened, there are 3 numbers to dial, and we should be able to begin the process of getting assistance or requesting assistance from there. But if you're saying it's a dispatch service and then the information needs to be relayed from one entity to the other, then certain things can become lost in translation.
Lots.
Yeah.
Or important information isn't relayed.
Precisely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't, and it's a question definitely I think we can explore further to find out who are the persons who are manning the 911 dispatch, and how much training have they received in being able to collect the information. What's the turnaround time between the receiving the 911 call to be able to get through to any one of these relevant services? The fire service, I know, has also spoken of this issue as well in previous instances. That the time may take longer when you're calling one person or one entity to call another entity. So having had multiple times where this has been an issue of concern, it perhaps is time that they look deeper at the system. Calling BERT directly, you talk to an EMT, and then it's more an emergency medical technician, someone who's trained to tell you, okay, well,
these are the steps you need to follow.
You know, while we're on our way there, tell us some of the signs and symptoms and some of the things you may be able to do as an untrained person while we make our way to you to render help. That the 911 person cannot do that. So clearly with the issues that we see in our society today, where you're looking at traffic accidents that happen so often, where you're looking at gunshots, stab wounds, and other things that may take place in the home, we have to develop the system where it can be able to meet the need.
Yeah. So that's the other topic. I'm certain, based on the previous 2 issues that we've discussed, we will be looking into those incidents that transpired over the weekend. But I'm saving the majority of our discussion this morning for the state of the economy and how the government of Belize proposes to deal with economic recovery in light of the pandemic situation. I know that last week the International Monetary Fund, which is the UN financial agency, issued a report based on a review that was conducted in country. And needless to say that what they found was what they found and reported on very dismal and grim in terms of our economic outlook, and the fact that the closest semblance of any form of recovery is not projected until 2025. So we're looking at a situation where we are indeed in dire straits. And when you look at what some of the prescriptions are coming from the IMF and what the Briceño administration is putting forward as its homegrown economic recovery plan, it raises a lot of questions, right? Because we're at a point in time where we're seeing and we're feeling the effects of the economic crunch. And so a level or a degree of confidence has to be placed in either of the 2 options if we're looking at it that way. If on the one hand, the the IMF, sorry, has prescribed specific courses of action to be taken, but on the other hand, the economic recovery plan that is of the Briceño administration is putting forward certain things, then where do we as the persons affected place our confidence? And I would want to think that naturally we would gravitate towards what our government is telling us, because they are the ones, those in government are the ones that are kind of stewarding and shepherding the way forward. So more confidence, would naturally be given there. But nonetheless, like I'm saying, it raises a number of questions in terms of how viable, how sustainable, how practical, and how prudent going forward some of these measures will actually be. And it is interesting as well, Marlene, because the word retrenchment is something that most in government shy away from. But if it's a scenario where there is no other option left but to be able to, send persons home, so to speak, in terms of trying to reshape the economic situation that we're in, then that is the last option, but that is still something that is being talked about and perhaps tossed around in certain circles.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, one of the worrisome things that the report pointed out. The projected date for pre-COVID levels, I think you said, was 2025.
Yeah.
But I think one of the key elements of what we have to look at is that pre-COVID level was already not a very good position.
We're already
for
in
the
a dismal state.
It was near 100% debt to GDP ratio. So even pre-COVID levels in 2025 isn't very promising for the country. So I think that the dismal is one word, but I think when we look at how the picture is painted as to how severe the economic crisis that we are in it shows that we have to get serious. I think on all levels, we have to pay attention to how government is spending money. That's primary focus. But we also have to consider how we ourselves, individually in our own lives, have to adjust our lifestyles as well. This is not going to be an easy period for Belize, and where retrenchment is one of the big concerns, I know devaluation is another as well. And I know for people who are much older, they hear what they call the D word, and they understand how scary that time can be. So there's a lot to look at, and clearly the conversation about the economy is one that is going to be ongoing as we prepare the budget and we prepare to hear the first draft of the budget, and as the negotiations, or I should say compromise at this point, between the unions and government is still ongoing.
I think when you look at the concluding report that was released late last week, one of the things that immediately jumped out at me is the fact that in one fiscal year, the government borrowed $700 million, right? And those monies were spent on a range of different things. But the point is, prior to then, we were already in a very, very critical state in terms of where we are as an economy. And to add another $750 million onto that, it is what has us where we are. And that is the reason why when we spoke with Prime Minister Briceño last week, he was the one who said, okay, we can't continue to print money. We can't continue to be injecting these monies into the economy in an attempt to resuscitate it if down the road we're running the risk of devaluing the Belizean dollar, all right? So there's a lot to think about going into the budget preparation.
And very little time.
Yeah,
very
and
little time.
Very little time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think one of the things that came out of the conversation last week, and the new growth industries is one that we need to look at. The hope is, and I know that the local, the tourism sector is seeing that they're starting to see more interest. When you hear the United States rollout plan for vaccination, and we rely primarily on the United States for or tourists, we know that we may start to see more activity taking place there. But we have learned or lessened that we cannot rely exclusively on tourism. And agriculture is also an area where we know that this administration has talked about being able to invest more and make it as a very significant income earner as well. But that's also cyclical and also at the mercy of natural events, which we've seen from droughts to floods to highly active hurricane season. So I guess one of the things that I keep paying attention to is where's the innovation?
Yeah.
Where are the new areas that we can explore? And sometimes it will be tough choices. It will be compromises in being able to figure out what will be best for the economy, because that does impact the quality of life that people have. So, yeah, we'll be paying attention as the budget is read.
Will be presented on the 26th, which is next Friday, right? So it's just something for us to look forward to as we try to navigate through these very, very difficult financial and economic headwinds.
So, I do have one thing I wanted to say, just because it will help people in Belize district, especially. As we said, the rollout of the vaccinations is ongoing, and I think up to last week they said over 7,000 people had been vaccinated so far. And so today, starting this week, at the SJC Gym and Swift Hall, SJC Gym on the north side, Swift Hall near St. Martin's Church, they are going to be administering vaccinations to persons who are over 60, healthcare workers, persons with HIV, cancer, and those receiving dialysis. You don't need to register in advance. Just bring your social security card or any other form of identification, and you can go in and you can get your first vaccine. So I know people have been calling numbers and trying to get an appointment. You can just show up at either the SJC Gym or Swift Hall, and once you meet the criteria, over 60, healthcare worker, or one of these conditions, you can get your first dose of your vaccination.
Perfect.
Right.
All right. So, as is normal, these stories and more will be covered at 6 o'clock in terms of our newscast. You can catch it on News 5, and the content will be streamed on Facebook as well. So that concludes our Eye on the News this morning.
And with that, we're going to get moving into our show for today. And as we mentioned, the conversation is still ongoing with the unions. Today, we're going to be talking with the president of the Belize National Teachers Union, as well as the president of the National Trade Union Congress of Belize. We'll find out more about what their members are saying about the proposed salary cuts and increment freeze, and what is the way forward.
This week, we're also celebrating International Forest Day. And as such, there is a series of activities that is planned for the week, and we will be discussing that as our third and final segment this morning.
All right, so we're going to take that break. When we come back, we'll get our conversation started with the union representatives. So please, stay tuned.
Hello? Okay, sure, I'll be there. Hello?
Hi, Mommy. When are you coming home? I really miss you.
Hearing the voice of our loved ones can always lift our spirits and make us feel whole again. With Smart's Twice as Nice promotion, prepaid customers who make 5 minutes worth of national calls on Sundays can enjoy 50% off, top double on all national calls for the rest of the day. Call your loved ones and enjoy half off all day long. Smart, bringing people together.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank Limited is here for you. There is nothing more important than your health and safety, and we continue to make every effort to make banking safer for you. Our staff is working around the clock to make sure you can do your banking conveniently 24/7 using our mobile banking app and online banking and keeping ATMs up and running. We value your relationship with us and are here to provide the support you need. First responders are also out there 24/7. Thank you, healthcare workers, security forces, firefighters, caregivers. You are all appreciated. Stay safe. We will get through this together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And welcome back. Our conversation this morning, as Marlene mentioned just before we went to our first commercial break, is with the unions. We have with us the president of the Belize National Teachers Union, Senator Elena Smith. We also have with us the president of the National Trade Union Congress of Belize, Luis Martinez. And they're both going to tell us about where we are in terms of the negotiations with the government of Belize in respect of the proposed salary cuts going forward. Good morning, guys.
Yeah.
Good morning.
President, good morning.
All right, so we're embarking upon what seems to be a rather divisive issue in terms of the proposed salary cuts and how the public is reacting to it. Some are in support of the position taken by the unions and the public officers. Others in the private sector have their own position that they have taken. Let's begin by talking about the ongoing negotiations with the joint negotiations team. Where are we and what has been the conversation as we lead up to either a counter proposal or the next round of meetings with the government?
Okay, so if I may begin then, we've had an initial meeting with the government officials. That initial meeting was carried out with unions separately. So in February, our meeting was on the 11th, that they met with BNTU. And then we had a joint meeting with the union, the three public sector unions along with the NTUCB, and that was held on the 4th of March. And so at those meetings, the first meeting was for us to present our views. They did a presentation on state of the economy, and then we were then given a chance to present our views on that and some recommendations in terms of how we believe or what we see that the government can implement to help it in achieving the monies that we need to bridge the gap that we have. The second meeting was with as I said, the joint unions along with the NTUCB. And at that meeting, then we had that joint discussion because we had explained to them, or we had asked of them that we wanted to meet jointly after that initial meeting, that it would have been joint meetings going forward. So at that second meeting, that's where, they presented to us an official document, if you will, detailing the things that they were asking. And then on the 5th, which was a Friday, we got in writing a clearer position in terms of what it is that they are asking of us specifically as union members or as unions, as employees. And that is where that spoke to the 60 million in terms of salary reduction and then the 20 million in terms of increment freeze. After that, BNTU had a meeting with the government team because I wanted for our council to get the presentation and for them to have a chance to ask their questions. But at that meeting, we also invited the joint unions to be with us in that meeting that we held with the government team the following week. And so that is where we've been in terms of meetings with the government. At this point in time, we have received an official proposal from them, and we are in the process. We met yesterday to work on to complete our counter proposal or our response to their proposal that must be submitted today.
Let's take some time to talk to Louis about where the NTUCB is. We know the BNTU, as Senator Smith just stated, is working on their counter proposal. What about the other unions?
Yeah, so we have 3 frontline unions that are facing this issue at the moment. And so the National Trade Union Congress is monitoring the situation with extreme vigilance. The idea of removing $60 million out of an economy which is in recession is concerning, and the idea of cutting salary from approximately 14,000 public officers is even more concerning. We are aware that the joint unions, particularly the National Trade Union Congress Public Service Union and the APSSM are putting together their response to the government of Belize. Yeah. And we will, that team will provide the general membership at the National Trade Union Congress and what are the directions. And we are definitely requesting our members to stand in solidarity with the 3 unions. And the spin-off effect on the private sector unions and other unions is going to be equally concerning.
Okay. Let me ask a question here. The Prime Minister made remarks last week that were, very much controversial, and you guys took umbrage to what was said. Let's remove who said it, and let's look at the fact that we are in a situation where there are certain requirements. And in this particular case, the public service and, of course, the unions are expected to give as part of the sacrifices to be made for us to get out of this situation. This is not something new. I know we've heard of this from last year when the pandemic was just in its initial stages and the economy was already taking a hit. The previous administration made similar recommendations, and together you guys said, well, look, let's explore other options in terms of either savings or revenue collection as opposed to docking our salaries. Where do we stand now? How do you respond to the idea that perhaps more is being requested of you collectively to be able to meet this particular request?
Yeah, very, very good question. And of course, without paying attention to who mentioned it, we all know that the group of people who continues to sacrifice in this country are public officers, teachers, police, BDF, you name it. We are not only giving up monetary sacrifices, and for example, last year, when we gave up our increments, our increment is about 2.5% of your income. And so the individuals in these unions have given up monetary value, and in terms of the time, the sacrifice during a pandemic, when we have elections, these group of people are in the front line. When we have hurricane, so the sacrifice cannot be measured, Isani.
Let me continue with my line of question here. When the pandemic took hold of our country and our economy took a severe hit, a lot of measures were put in place, either in terms of persons who had to be laid off, those in the private sector, either in terms of creating certain work schedules for those of you guys in the public sector, in terms of showing up to work and what have you. Now, when you juxtapose what the measures were that were taken in the private sector space against the measures that were taken in the public service, you have now a situation where, for the most part, public officers are working on a shift system where they go to work on certain days, they're at home on other days, and what have you. And teachers are working from home for the most part because schools are closed. When you listen to what you guys would be putting forward and what the teachers are saying, well, we invest heavily into apparatus, into the classrooms and what have you, but we're at a point in time right now, and I'm not saying that this is a permanent state of affairs, we're simply saying that where we are at the moment, perhaps some of what you're clamoring for or some of what you're putting forward as the reasons why, you should be given some kind of reprieve may not necessarily hold water. How do you respond to that?
But
Yeah, so
Isani, let me just start from the teacher's perspective, and then Brother Luke can speak to
Sure.
public service perspective.
Yeah.
So indeed, as you have said, all throughout the pandemic, our teachers were working. Yes, they were not in the classroom physically, but they were working. And I think we would appreciate that giving online classes has been more difficult than people think it is, and that we thought it would have been. So that in itself has been a challenge. As you rightly said, our teachers continue, even throughout the pandemic, continue to sacrifice, to give out of their own pockets. A lot of the things that the teachers had to do to get our students packages had to be done via their own finances. And so that is one end of it. In terms of, say, sacrificing and comparing us to the other private sector workers, we have to understand that the salaries that we were getting, those were being spent on the businesses as well. So our monies that we had, that we earned, that we worked doubly hard for, we use those to help some of these public sector businesses to remain open. So it is not that because we are teachers and we were not at school, it means that we were not contributing. Imagine removing that $80 million, that total package, from our spending monies that we would have. What do you think would happen out there? What do you think would happen to those businesses? Because we would not be able to go out and purchase as we were doing or as we have been doing throughout this pandemic. Also, we have to consider the fact that a lot of our people have seen where their spouses or maybe their children who live with them have lost jobs. And so these families have now gone from maybe 2 income that they were having to now only having 1. And that 1 income that you are having, which for some is under $2,000 per month, is now going to be cut. So you're going to be having less. So we have to look at the bigger picture. How is this going to affect the bigger picture? I will have less monies in my pocket. I'll be able to spend less. And some of my people might end up at a point where they would need to get assistance from government because they really and truly would not be able to afford it.
So you
all together.
Yeah, you mentioned several things there, and I want to touch on a couple of them. One, last year, and I know it gets lost in the conversation a lot. Last year, there was an increment freeze, and there was the cut in allowances for head of departments. So that was the sacrifice that was made at the start of the pandemic here in Belize when it came to public officers. However, it was well known that this conversation about salary cuts was one that was necessary from then. However, it got delayed, and none other than the former Prime Minister said to himself that whoever is the new leader will have to have these conversations. So that's where we are today. I think the question here is, in your poll to your members so far, there was a question asked about what are you willing to sacrifice to help the economy recover? And that's the question I want to hear from both of you today. What are you willing to sacrifice? Because we know and understand fully well where we are in terms of the economic crisis.
Yeah, Marlene,
we seem to have lost audio there. Yeah.
We keep talking about the sacrifices and what we're willing to give up.
Mm-hmm.
And the discussion surrounding the tremendous efforts that have been exercised to present revenue enhancement and cost-saving measures to the government, I believe, have been ignored for years. And so the unions are saying, look, come on, man, we have opportunity to gain revenue. Can't go straight into the discussion of salary cuts. That's not reasonable and on the card of we have to sacrifice. We've been sacrificing.
Okay. Now
well, let me get Senator Smith to respond to that one.
Go ahead, Senator.
Indeed. So to say to me that salary cut would have been a must, I don't agree, because as Brother Luke said, we have been working, we have had our reps working on these cost saving and revenue enhancement measures. We have presented reports to the government. We presented 3 reports. And in those reports, we clearly outlined what are the things that the government should be doing to ensure that it is collecting the revenues that it has out there to be collected, and that it is saving, it is not spending the way it has been spending, because we know if we continue to behave in that manner, what will happen.
Yeah.
As Brother Luke has said, a lot of these things, Marlene, that we have presented, had they been implemented, we would not have been in this position where we are right now. As a matter of fact, right now we have shown where there's more than what they are asking from us. The 80 million, there is more than 80 million out there right now that can be collected. We have over 100 million out there right now that can be collected. Mm-hmm. And government isn't pursuing that. And we have to ask the question, why is it that we are not pursuing those avenues? Why is it that we are still at a point like this when you are telling me, the worker, that the country is in such a bad state that I must reduce your salary and I must put a hold on your increments that you work so hard for, when you, the government, are at this point in time sending letters to say, listen, give Marlene a break. Marlene has to pay $100,000, let her pay only $50,000. This is not the time for us to be doing those kinds of things, because the country needs every cent that it can get. So we have shown where this country, our governments have been able to collect all of these monies, and we have not been doing our part in terms of being able to go out there and get those monies.
So the question is, in the previous meetings that you've had, and I think people have been following this process, no one was surprised that following municipal elections, the conversation was introduced about salary cuts. But before that, there were a series of consultations held with the unions where you met with the Deputy Prime Minister and other respective ministers to discuss these very same issues. We were told as the media that these were cordial meetings, you felt it was productive. Were these things put on the table as suggestions in how to move forward, and what was the feedback that you got then?
Just to correct though, Marlene, it wasn't a series of meetings. We had one meeting before election, and that was the introductory meeting where they met with the union separately, and we had those discussions. And then after election was when the official proposal, if you will, in terms of putting those in black and white, that was presented to us as union.
Well, you'll forgive my observation here, but this is my perspective on the whole thing. When it was raised as a pertinent issue last year was an election year, so perhaps for political expediency or other purposes, the government then sort of acquiesced, if I may, to what the position was from the unions and sort of moved that aside, perhaps in hopes of winning the general elections in November. So that was set aside then. They did not win. Another party rose to power and is now the government of the day. And just 2 weeks ago, we had another election cycle, the municipal elections. And so if you're saying that there was only one introductory meeting that was held prior to that election, then perhaps it seems that it may have been convenient only to have the topic raised in brief discussion, wait for the outcome of the municipal, and then introduce a more stringent, for want of a better word, a more stringent position in terms of what we need to do to realize these monies. Would that be a fair assessment of what the picture is? Any of you guys?
I would want to agree with you, because yes, indeed, as I said, the initial meeting was just general discussion and presentation on the situation and general discussion as to what we think or what suggestions we have to for the government to be able to realize the funds that it is that we need as a country. And so that was the discussion. We had asked them outright, if that was the position and what that would look like. At that first meeting, they did not commit, or they did not give us any firm indication that salaries would be cut. The comment that they made was, well, we are looking at all angles because we have to see how we can be able to get these sums of monies that we need. Yeah. So it wasn't until, as I said, it wasn't until after election, when we met the day after election, that document was shared with us. We discussed that document that came, and then the following day we asked them to put clearly in writing exactly what it is that you are asking of us, because we want for our people to have a clear picture of the request coming from the government. And the following day, which was the Friday the 5th, is when we got that official letter, putting in black and white, simply just taking out the portion that had to do with the request of us. Because the first document had all of those matters in terms of cost saving and revenue enhancement. Some of them had a figure attached to them. For example, like as I said, the reduction in salary had the 60 million, the increment fees had the 20 million, but there were other revenue enhancement measures that were listed that had no figures to them. So there was no indication what would have been yielded from these measures, but they had an amount that they would yield from salary reduction and increment freeze.
Yeah. So from the poll of your membership so far, is it that all branches are saying no to both the salary cut and the increment freeze? Is it the length of time? Because both of these would be for 3 years. Is there room for some sort of openness to compromise on this issue? Senator Smith?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, from our end, and Brother Luke can answer for PSU.
Yeah.
From our end, yes, in terms of the reaction to salary cut, that has been across all branches. That teachers are saying that they are not going to accept a salary cut. They cannot afford to have a salary cut at this point in time. In terms of, say, compromise, as you may understand, that portion is wide. Yeah. So there are some teachers who are willing to make some sacrifices in terms of looking at the increment freeze, but the concern is the period of time, because as you would have seen in that presentation that the teacher made, the long-lasting effect of giving up increments as opposed to to doing other things. So we have not, in terms of the responses regarding that compromise, we have had several suggestions in terms of a year or 2 years, you know, or maybe I would be willing to take a cut, but not that amount, maybe 2%, you know. So these varying suggestions were made, but we do not have a majority to say one compromise that we would be willing to make. So we have to now look and see, go back to our members and see, you know, where we would have the majority of people agreeing to what compromise, so that we can be able to present that.
Where are you in terms of the tiered approach, where we look at it similar to how we do the tax bracket? People who earn a certain amount may take a smaller cut versus those who earn a higher amount may take another cut. Both of you.
Those discussions did come up indeed. Those suggestions were made. But again, Marlene, some of our teachers, a lot of our teachers are saying that if it is that they have to sacrifice, then that sacrifice must come with conditions. Yeah. And those conditions, you know, might be conditions that the government might not be willing to accept, because we are looking at our ministers cutting down on some of those allowances that they get that we believe are not necessary, especially at this time.
Those are the things like the entertainment allowances, the housing allowances. They have taken a 10% cut, but the allowances, I believe, are still there.
Right, but if you compare 10% cut of 2,000 and you compare 10% of 7 or whatever that total package is that they get, there's no way that will compare. And so if you are getting 10% of 8,000 or 10,000 and I'm getting 10% of 2,000, that's a significant amount for me. And as a teacher, I have to be paying my loans at the bank. I may have to have children. I have students in school. I have to be paying for them because I am still paying now my same school fees. Nothing has changed despite the fact that my child is working from home, I'm doing classes from home on the computer. I am still paying the $1,000 or whatever amount that is for school fees. That has not changed any at all. So my bills remain the same, but my salary is smaller.
Well, what we're going to do right now is take a quick break. We have a lot more to discuss with the representative of the NTUCB and the BNTU, but we'll take a quick break and we'll be back in a few.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that by simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop, it increases your productivity by 26%. And adding a monitor takes it up by 35%. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience with devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands that you can rely on. With collaboration tools such as Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky, your team can stay connected and perform efficiently no matter where they are. Fulltech Systems, your trusted technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Caused the intense flooding overnight in the western and southern parts of the country.
Yeah?
Do we need to renew the insurance policy?
The insurance policy? Oh, let me check.
Renew your policies, file a claim, and even send us a message using RFNG Online.
Now we're good. It says we're covered.
Okay, great.
It pays to get it right with RFNG Insurance, a road group company.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something, the Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. we are stronger together. The Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
And welcome back. We're continuing our conversation this morning with the president of the Belize National Teachers Union and the president of the National Trade Union Congress of Belize. We're discussing the issue of the proposed 10% salary cut that both bodies will be facing. Now, I have a question that I want to pose to you, Senator Smith. We know the BNTU to be a rather no-nonsense group of persons, a membership organization, and I want to know what's to happen next. You're in a negotiation process at the moment. Should the counter proposal not fly, or should it not be met with the kind of response that you're anticipating, where do you guys go thereafter? What's the plan of action should these counter proposals not be met favorably?
Well, as you may be aware, we have a list of activities being planned leading up to the date of the budget presentation. And we await the response from the government, and that response then would enable us to have another meeting with our council, sharing with our members, and then we get feedback from our members in terms of what next. So indeed, yes, our teachers, I will tell our teachers right now, are not at all happy with the proposals from the government. They are at a point where they are really and truly fed up with what has happened with our governments, and I'm not saying government in terms of just the party that is in power right now. I'm talking about governments in general. So our people are really and truly at a breaking point right now when it comes to the way our governments have been managing our finances, the way we are being treated, because it comes across as if, the people who sacrifice the most are the ones who are being targeted, and the people who have not benefited in any way from having all of these discounts and all of these huge packages are the ones now who have to bear the burden of this country on our shoulders. And so our people right now are not happy, not satisfied, and they are prepared for anything at this point in time. So as we move forward, we as a union, we plan as things change. So we don't put a plan to say, well, this is what we are going to be doing from now until next year. Because things do change, situation is fluid, and as things change, our plans change. So we have to ensure that our actions are matching the changes that are happening.
Is there the potential for a strike?
Well, I would want to think, Marlene, that at a time like this, there's a potential for anything. I mean, we don't know how things would go. We don't know what is going to be the response of the government. And so we have to be prepared for anything. And the same way we have to be prepared for anything from them is the other way around as well. they must be prepared for anything from us as well. And we are not going to be hiding our hands any at all. And as you said, we have never been a union to shy away from taking any action. We have been a union. And if the public wants to be honest and fair, the public can say that we have been a union. We have been one of the unions who have stood up time and time again against governments, red and blue, to ensure that we hold them accountable as best as we can, that there's transparency, there's accountability. We had our strike on good governance. And so we believe that we as teachers have done our part to try to get our governments to govern in a right way.
Senator Smith, how do you put the pandemic into context? Because one of the strengths, and you are right, the unions have repeatedly taken to the streets, sometimes on your own as the only union, for a multitude of issues, from salary adjustments to good governance to the list of demands that you had along with those good governance measures. However, this time, the feedback the impact is not going to be the same, because when the children are home with their parents in a strike in normal times, you have everyone's attention, but they're already at home. How do you put that into context, the potential strike action that the teachers or the unions may do at this point?
Well, again, keep in mind, Marlene, that we are approaching this matter as joint unions. So it is not just the BNTU at this point who would be the main ones taking any action, or the only union being out there. We have the other unions along with us who would be a part of whatever actions we decide that we would be taking as joint unions. So while that may be true, that the impact that we may be able to have as teachers at this point in time because of the current situation may be different from what it would normally be, because governments like to see numbers, and when teachers are out of the classroom physically, it has a bigger impact on what is going on, and people are able to see us. Current situation would not allow us to be able to do certain actions that maybe we would want to take the way we would want to take them. But as we all know, there are many ways to skin a cat. And so teachers are creative, and we know how to work around things. So whatever decision our members give to us, and I'm not saying at this point in time that it is a strike, but whatever decision they give us, we will find a way to carry out those decisions.
Let's get Brother Luke's position on that. As the head of the NTUCB, where do you stand on what is being shared by Senator Smith? Seems as
your mic, Brother Luke.
You may be muted.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Senator Smith had mentioned the joint union approach. And so the mandate has to, and then when it comes to National Trade Union Congress, that mandate will come from our membership. Like I have said earlier, we are monitoring the situation very closely. But I want to go back to a comment which you have made earlier. These types of comments rub the working class in some very serious kind of way. And so particularly to the three unions that are being affected, you mentioned that we've been working at home. The time has been cut in terms of working hours and a whole lot of things. Back to the working at home, working from home. We could tell you that the working from home is not being financed by the government abilities, which means that public officers have to find data. And when we talk about public officers, I'm not saying public service union. Right, so let's make that clear.
Sure.
Public officers need to find money for data. They have to find money for these electronic devices. Some of them didn't have computers, so they go to these learning institutions to purchase computer, iPad, you name it, tablets, you name it. And so we are financing the work from home policies, Isane. The electricity bill goes up, your light bill, your water bill go up. So the government of Belize is not financing these activities. So again, it's not fair for us. That is not a fair statement. And now we want to go back to some of the savings, especially the $60 million that we keep hearing about. So even though the government is reminding us about the wage bill, which is exploding like fireworks. There was a circular last year, Circular 5 of 2020, which was extended by Circular 7 of 2020, and those circulars addressed a moratorium on hiring. And if the media were to conduct a research on how far are we with that moratorium, we'd see that an excess of $10 million has appeared on the expenditure, the wage bill. So
and these are all with new hires or replacements?
I challenge you to do the research, Sister Marlene.
So let's put it into some context then.
Challenge the media to do the research.
Let's put it into some context then. So you've mentioned the existence of two particular circulars, 5 and 7, that speak to a moratorium on hiring. But we're looking at just recently 250 recruits being taken into the police department. So that flies in the face of both of these moratoriums, correct?
That is correct. But we're not talking about the recruits. You cannot get $10 million out of the recruits.
I know.
It has to be it has to be more than that. And the employment isn't coming. Is not the frontline sectors isn't being. They are not benefiting from that. We're seeing hires all over.
Precisely. That was only one example that I was using. I'm saying that the moratorium speaks to one thing, and perhaps it would have been a collective agreement that we will not proceed with the hiring of anybody going forward. But here comes a party with its own mandate that says, you know what, we'll strengthen this particular area by introducing or adding more officers, more boots on the ground. But we need to pay those people. The salaries for them won't come from nowhere, correct?
Yeah, so the operations of the government, I believe, should not totally rely on the decisions of politicians. We have a Ministry of Finance that is managed by public officers, the financial secretary, right? So the changing a government, we can't buy that. This moratorium has an expiration date, the 21st of March, right? And so we've seen you put out a moratorium and then you continue to hire people. It's ridiculous.
Well, let me get a question in here since we started talking about the police department. I know you're here as the president of the NTUCB, but you're also a member of the department. And looking at the response of Commissioner Williams, who spoke only personally on his point of view, to be absolutely clear.
I am, so I cannot.
No. Let me get to my question. So my question is, there is a police, the commissioner said personally, his personal take was he'd rather a cut than a retrenchment. But the police association is yet to put forward a position. The Nurses Association has put forward their position. They're saying no to a salary cut, and they're going back to the fact that they haven't received the overtime that they were promised early on in the pandemic as well, and the supportive measures that were to be instituted. Has the NTUCB or the individual unions looked out to reach out to the associations that are affected as well? Maybe they're not union members, but to be able to expand and cover all those who will be affected?
Yeah, very, very, very good question. And when as an umbrella organization, when we hear these types of comments, well, of course, it is prudent for us to reach out to to the body which represents police officers. When it comes to the suggestions made by the Commissioner of Police, that's for him to, that's his position, and so I'm not going to knock on his position.
Yes, but my question about working with the associations, I don't know if the commission is a union member. I'm not, that's his personal position. But there's a police association, as there is a nurse association, and there are other associations that do fall under the wage bill that's paid by government.
Yeah. Yes, so we are open, like I keep saying that the National Trade Union Congress is monitoring the discussions, and we are going to reach out to every single union. In fact, even the private sector. I've mentioned earlier about the spin-off, right? And so the discussion with the private sector employers, we need to remind them that, look, we cannot continue to cut wages from the working class. And this brings us to another concern, which is going to affect the revenue side of this discussion, man. Just from the public sector alone, when you start talking about salary cuts, the government is about to lose over $7 million in tax revenue. The GST revenue, we are still calculating that. Social security is going to be affected. And when you add the salaries that has been cut by private sector, some of those salaries are taxable salaries. And when you amalgamate all of that, more than $7 million. So we have to cut off who knows to spike the face.
Senator Smith,
we are trying to raise the revenue, and so we cannot take actions that will affect revenue, Marlene.
Let me ask Senator Smith this question. I know we've had so many conversations over the years with union representatives on what seems to be the same issues, and as we face this upcoming proposal for salary cuts and potential increment freeze, we're hearing it once again. And that is, when you talk about the wage bill, who are we actually paying? Who are the workers that are on that list? Who are the contract officers? And also, who are the new hires, now that we bring that into the equation, that this new administration have acquired over the years? I know that was something that was requested of the at the last meeting that you had. What is the status of that, and why is it critical that you get this information?
Okay, so as you said, when we look at the wage bill, we keep hearing about teachers and public officers, and that the bill is so high, and they tend to look at us as if though we are the ones who have the bill where it is. It's not just us, the regular employees. It's all of the other persons who are paid by the government, who are paid via the government purse. So that number then, while we have, I think it's at 14,000 total, we have to look at what percentage of that amount amounts for what amount of that bill. And so you would find that because we are a large number, of course our bill is going to be high, but compare that to the persons, maybe the CEOs and the ministers and all of those other persons with the package that they get, and if you compare that number to the percent of the wage bill as compared to our number and our percent of the wage bill, you would see the difference. And so again, it is difficult. It is always difficult for us to get proper information, because when we request information, we do get some, and then when you are sifting through that information, you will find that, but wait, I don't see this department listed here, or I don't see these persons listed here. So where are these persons, and where is the figure for these persons from this ministry or this department? And so a lot of times it is difficult for us to to get a true picture of what that number is and what it represents, because for whatever reason, information, statistics, it comes in pieces.
Okay, what you're saying harkens back to a conversation that we had last week with Chief Magistrate Fraser from the APSSM, where we had asked about the same thing, access to certain information that would paint a true picture of what the actual number of persons employed by government is and what the spectrum or the gamut is of the respective salaries. You're looking at a spectrum where you have people on the higher end and you're also looking at those on the lower end. Now, in that context, I noticed that last week as well, a list was put out in terms of the CEOs and all these other persons who came in with this new government. How does that factor into this equation? Because we're looking at persons who are also being brought on board that are also being paid from the public purse.
Right, and if you notice, some of those persons that you saw on the list would have been persons who are replacing persons who left, like the CEOs, but you also saw some new persons on that list. And we don't know the reason for some of those persons on that list, or we don't even know the role of those persons. For example, we saw things about aides being hired. What are their responsibilities? We don't know. Why is it that we need them? If we look at not just salaries, Isani and Marlene, if you would have seen that interview that Jules did, where he spoke about, you know, the Prime Minister coming in his own vehicle, but he has another vehicle that travels with him, his security forces, you know, and talk about, well, that was a new vehicle being bought. It's like, well, I don't know about that. You're giving me news. These are the kinds of things that we are referring to. It's not just about hiring people or new hires, but it's about all of the other spending that has been happening that for whatever reason, you know, we seem to want to deny these things are happening, and we don't want to be upfront with these things. All of those things combined are what have us where we are today. And our teachers are saying, and our professors are saying that, listen, if it is that you want to cut our salaries, then these are the things that we are demanding that you do before you even get to that point.
Let's talk about that.
Our demands are to ensure that 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the road, we do not come back to the same place again. Those are the kind of demands that we are making of this government right now.
And let's talk about that. I think it's critical that we start to speak about some of the clear areas of wastage that you may have identified, having public servants who are there to witness and see. What are some of the things? I know the revenue collection is one of the top on the list. Talk to us about some of the other areas that you feel need to be addressed before you can have a serious conversation about cutting wages.
Well, Luke, you want to chime in, or should I go ahead?
Yeah. So, Marlene, there has to be a time when the government will realize that, look, we cannot continue to. My speaker is on. Yeah, we cannot continue to be to waiver taxes, especially, for example, during the last administration, where they wrote off in excess of $90 million for land tax. That shouldn't have happened, right? And I think that that was done twice. So that's $180 million.
All right, so
why wasn't there any pushback from the public service or the entire apparatus then? You're aware of what took place. Seemingly there is an objection to it. Why did you guys not then raise your objections openly to say, look, we can't be giving these wealthy landowners any form of relief in the form of tax breaks and what have you?
We did, because that matter came to the Senate, and in the Senate, the NTUCB did object to that, and we did not support that any at all. So we did raise objections to it.
Yes.
I'm talking measures or action being taken. I know that at the upper house, you're comprised of various bodies, the opposition, the government, social partners, etc. But if it's only one or two persons raising objection there, but it does not necessarily translate to action on the ground to say firmly, we're not in support of this. That is where I'm going.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is where, sorry, but look, let me make
it's
one
one of the biggest problem, the timely information and the sharing of this information. We've seen time and time and again where, and this practice has to stop, where Parliament decides that they want to ram certain resolutions and acts and bills through one reading, or even if it goes through one or two readings and it goes to committee, you'll find out that you only have a short period of time, right? And so we keep saying that we need the information. We cannot assist in the process without the timely information and proper information.
Yeah.
These revenue generating departments submit monthly reports to the Ministry of Finance, and so the Financial Secretary has these information.
So
we are saying that share the information with the union so that we could assist. So when we see a shortfall or we see leakages, we could jump in and assist, so we don't end up that is same position like what Sister Elena said earlier. 5-10 years from now, we'll be here lamenting over the same issues.
Well, I think the point is that is what has happened over the years. We have been speaking about these issues, and you know, I think when people watch what happens, the continuous call is, well, public servants are involved in some of these processes, and that they could flag it earlier, whether to their respective unions, or if they, or perhaps there is a log of these things that may be taking place, and you wait until these moments to bring them out. But moving back to the preliminary question, Senator Smith, guide us through. The clear situation is that you have recognized and you have outlined areas where you know there can be additional revenue coming in beyond going to the salary of a teacher or the salary of a public servant or to a nurse who's been working day in, day out, and people who have given a lot to the country. So tell me where you said that you have your demands as to what you want them to see the government do first. Tell us about them.
Okay, so just before I go there, Marlene, we keep looking to the unions to be able to get all of these matters resolved. And while we as unions try our best to ensure, you know, good governance, we go out on the street and we strike, you know, we lose salaries for doing these things. We must recognize that as Belizeans, all of us have a responsibility to do what it is that the unions do. The government, when they were in opposition, they were very weak. They were not doing what it is that they should have been doing as an opposition to hold the government accountable. But yet the unions are the ones being targeted, and we are saying, oh, the unions didn't do this, and where were the unions from 2008? Come on. As Belizeans, when the unions take to the streets or when the unions raise these issues about good governance, we should see Belizeans in general supporting us, because these are things that will come back to haunt us as they are doing right now. So I just needed to make that very clear. In terms of demands and in terms of expectations, our people are saying, listen, one of the things that we have to look at is asset recovery. We have to look at people enriching themselves so quickly. We have to look at these Whistleblowers Act. We have to look at these kinds of legislation that must be put in place to ensure that when our government officials engage in these kinds of behavior, that we are able to recover and we are able to ensure that they're held accountable. Because the reason why we are where we are is because of the doings of these leaders who we have elected. And if we cannot hold them accountable, if we cannot have a time when we can bring them and get what it is that they have taken from us. Then we will forever have this, because other leaders will come in and they will understand that, listen, if I get so many parcels of land, if I, I'm spending money not in the best way, nothing will happen to me. I will retire and I will get my pension and I will move on. So these are some of the things that all people are saying, listen, under UNCAC, these are important matters that we have to push. You cannot just be talking and say, oh, UNCAC. It has to, we have to move to the next phase where we do some continued legislative changes. And don't come and tell me, oh, it's on the table and we will do it. Because when the government wants to make a change, they can go to the House and they can pass a law in one day. Yeah. So if it is that we are serious about these changes that will help our country and will ensure that we don't get to this point again, then we can do that in a day, in 2 days, in a week. We can make those happen. So those are one of the things. The other demands that we are looking at in terms of the allowances that our ministers get, that we spoke about earlier, that we don't believe that they should be getting at this point in time. It is too excessive right now. Go and get a phone plan from BTL or Smart, whichever one of them want, get a phone plan. You don't have to get all of these monies on phone every month. In terms of housing, how many of our ministers, of our leaders have their own homes? 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. So what is the need for that? If it is that a minister has to come to a meeting from our district and can't get back home because of the time, then listen, man, make a deal with a hotel and say, okay, whenever my ministers have to remain in Belmopan for a meeting or in the city for a meeting, they will stay with you and you will offer me some discounts. So these are things that we as unions do for our people. We ensure that we get the best deal when we are spending our money. So why can't the government do the same? We have to look at collecting all that is out there. There's a lot that we can collect. We have how many of these stores who are out there, Marlene, who are not giving people receipts? If we look at that alone, how much can we earn from having these establishments providing people with their GST receipts? Putting these machines where they should be. And it's if you look, it's a lot of times you see where certain stores are the ones that don't do these things. And I will leave but I look to explain a bit in terms of where we are taxing people when goods are brought into this country, and how that works and how we can be earning from that. So those are some of the things that we are looking at, and we are saying to the government, there is monies out there. There are monies out there that you can collect that will help you to bridge this gap that you have. There is no need for your first move to be the easiest one. It's like you're in a fight, and so you're going to target the smallest person because that is the person that you know you can beat. No, man, tackle the big one, because the big one will give you more. And this is what the government seems to be doing. It seems that they want to go to the people who are most vulnerable and who will be most affected and target us by cutting our salary. And our teachers are saying, not so. Well, but I will come again. Do something else before you come to us, because we will not accept it.
Well, I would want to challenge you on that and say I don't think anyone sees the union as small, and I think that is one of the positive things that we have in our country, that the unions are very active and vocal, and don't shy away from speaking up when their members demand that they do so. But we are on a timeline, and the budget has to be presented, and there are several other things that have to take place before then. You said the counter proposal has been finalized. What is the next step? And are you giving a specific cutoff date for a response? Who wants to chime in on that one? Senator Smith?
We are finalizing. We, as I said, we were up until about midnight last night working on that. We have to now share that with our respective councils, just to get a final feedback from them, and we will be meeting again later today to just, fine tune, the last few, cross the last few T's and dot the I's and that kind of thing, and then submit that by this evening. The government side will be discussing, as we have been told, we'll be discussing that tomorrow when cabinet meets, And so we expect that after tomorrow's cabinet meeting that we should be getting some feedback from them in terms of their response to what we would have submitted to them.
All right. Well, we will keep on following, and we appreciate you coming in this morning to talk about the positions that you've put forward so far. And we know that it is a matter of going to your membership and finding out from them directly what they feel is, what their responses are to the proposals. Thank you very much, Senator Smith, and thank you very much, President Martinez, for joining us this morning.
Yeah, Marlene, before we leave, I just want to, Sister Elena made a very important point when she mentioned the point-of-sale system.
Yeah.
And so while we have a point-of-sale system in place, we believe that it has to be strengthened. In Bahamas, they were able to raise $91.8 million in 6 months with a strengthened point-of-sale system. 6 months, right? Remember that they had Hurricane Dorian, and of course they are faced with the same pandemic. So they did it, and we could do it.
Well, Marlene, if you are allowing us our last word, I want to thank you for having us on your show this morning. I want to especially thank our teachers for continuing the hard work that they have been doing. I want to just remind them of our motorcade for tomorrow. Yes. And we understand that we may be having not just teachers, but other unions will be joining us. I understand, I'm not sure as yet if that decision has been finalized, but we should be having some other support with our motorcade tomorrow. And we continue to fight, we continue to push on with these matters. And as we said, we will continue to inform and keep our members updated. But as we always say, we shall not be moved. That is our stand, and we will continue with that stand until we can't go anymore.
All right.
All right. So thanks again, guys. It's been an enlightening conversation in terms of the positions that you guys have shared with us, and best of luck going forward. We now go to our commercial break, and when we return, it's to discuss all things International Forest Week. Stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Es un hecho que puedes obtener servicios ilimitados con Smart. ¿Cansado de que se corte la línea cuando más necesitas estar conectado? Es un hecho que cuando te suscribes al plan de Smart Plus, obtienes llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Y también es un hecho que te puedes suscribir con un grupo de 5 miembros al plan Smart Share y hasta 40 miembros al plan Smart Enterprise para llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Smart tiene los verdaderos planes ilimitados. Es un hecho. Sé Smart y vive de forma Smart.
Why, Tony?
Boy, Keith, what you going on, man?
Well, I actually come see you because I need to buy a stack of them plastic plates and cups for my grocery shop because I run low.
Boy, I stopped importing that thing since April 15th, you know. And I just ran to the last batch, must be about like 3 weeks back, you know.
Man, do I usually have anything? What are you going on?
Check this, right? Under the new law, we ban all single-use plastics, so that the cups, plates, forks, spoons, and knives, all of that. Since April 15th, can't import none of them. Starting January 15, 2021, you can't manufacture them. April 15, 2021, you can't sell them. And after July 14, 2021, if you get catch with any other thing, you will get fined.
Me never know this. I guess I have to make some changes then. I have to make the customers know that anything not available. Anyways, bro. Thanks, man.
No problem, man. Take care.
traveling to the U.S. must present a negative COVID test or a documentation of having recovered from COVID-19 to travel to the U.S. In light of this, Maya, in partnership with Caring Hands Clinic, have established testing centers in all their municipal airports. Caring Hands Antigen Test Center is operational in San Pedro, Belize City, Dangriga, Placencia, and Hopkins. These testing facilities are staffed by licensed healthcare professionals, including doctors, registered nurses, and nurse practitioners. Testing is done using Abbott Rapid Test devices that are FDA approved and made in the USA. The service is safe, fast, affordable, and the close proximity of the centers makes them convenient. Walk-ins are welcomed, but appointments are encouraged. If you would like to make an appointment, please feel free to do so at Make your appointment, get tested, and in 15 minutes, you can get back to your vacation.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
find us
and follow us
today. And we're moving into our second conversation for today as we initiate the information around the celebration of International Forest Day. And this morning we have a panel of 4 joining us. We have Yanira Pop, who is the forest officer with the Forest Department, Florencia Guerra, who's also a forest officer with the Forest Department. We have Jasmine Zulfaber, who's a project officer at Red Plus Belize. And we have Ingrid Fernandez, communications officer for Red Plus Belize. Good morning and welcome.
Hi.
Good
morning. Good morning. Hi, good morning.
So we are getting ready to commemorate International Day of Forests 2021. And we're getting an early start, right, ladies?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, so the idea behind celebrating this day and the theme for this particular year is forest restoration, a path to recovery and well-being. When we talk about restoration, it clearly means that it means putting into context the damage that has been done. Let's start with the Forest Department to look at where we are in the health of our own forests in Belize.
So as it pertains to the forest cover that the country of Belize has currently, as of 2018, our forest cover is at 61.75%. And in terms of the amount of forests that are degraded, the percentage as of 2018 is also 7.33%. So that means in total about 68% of our forest is either, has some level of deforestation or degradation at some point.
In terms of the forest cover, if I'm looking at where we are in terms of restoration, what are we looking at in terms of forest cover, since we've spoken on the percentage that has been degraded?
Yes, so when it comes to degradation, we at the Forest Department, we have several initiatives that we are sort of striving to sort of either reverse the forest cover to what it once was, or to stop it at any point. I mean, that would be the best solution. But initiatives that we have is we do reforestation with our partners. We have various stakeholders that aid with that. We have initiatives in terms of agroforestry systems. We also have the implementation of best practices. This would be sustainable forest management. We have, with this, we have licenses, and instead of unsustainably harvesting the timber and wood products, there is some level of monitoring and assessments that we conduct to ensure that the harvesting of these products is sustainable and it doesn't lead to further degradation of our forests that we have.
Nice. Now let's get the ladies from Red Plus into the conversation and talk about your role in working along with the Forest Department.
Hi, Marlene. Well, thank you so much for having us. We're very excited to be here to share about what the Red Plus project is about. And I just want to start by telling you a little bit about the Red Plus project. The project came about as a response to the environmental emergency that the world is facing due to the increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So the United Nations gathered together and came up with this project, the Red Plus project, reduction of carbon emissions from deforestation and forest degradation through conservation, sustainable management of forests, and increase of carbon stocks in Belize. And what the project effectively does is that it financially rewards countries that are able and willing to maintain and sustain their forests. It puts a financial value system in place for these countries to be able to benefit from investors so that they can go ahead and continue doing what they've been doing for a long time, which is sustain and maintain our forests alive. So that's a little bit about the Red Plus project right there, and we can continue with some of the things that we've been doing this year. But if you have any questions, please go on.
No, I wanted to ask that because I think, you know, it's interesting. When you fly into Belize, it's perhaps the one thing that just stands out to you. It's all the green that we're surrounded by. And while some see it as a sign of underdevelopment, we're now entering an era where all this greenery now carries its own value. Talk to us about how this has been a global focus and how we're trying to capitalize on that as well.
Yeah, like I was saying just now, the United Nations recognizes that the increase of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere is at an urgent level globally. So they decided to come together and form a response to lower the emissions of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And this was a very innovative way in which everybody in the world contributes to lowering carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So effectively, these countries who are the ones who are contributing most to emissions invest in countries like ours to keep our forests alive, and that balances the amount of carbon that is emitted into the air every year.
What are the key messages being transmitted to persons who are interested in finding out what relevance or what importance this has on forestry?
What is your question, sorry?
I'm asking you what are the key messages being transmitted for anyone who is interested in finding out how this is important to the idea of forestry?
Our forests is one of our biggest and most precious natural resources that we have in Belize. in our development plan, we already had plans to sustain and to continue maintaining our forests. So it's very relevant. It's very important to all of us to contribute and to keep informing each other about the importance of maintaining our forests alive. And then that also gives an incentive to our government to continue doing so as well. But I think Forest Department could help you guys with more information in that area.
Just to add a little bit more to what my colleague had said, Ingrid, is that some of the key messages that we need to portray is the importance that forest has in sustaining livelihood. The goods and services that forests provide as food, clean air, clean water, the importance that we have in restoring our forests, it will improve our environment. The amount of jobs that can be produced at a different scale, the idea that every single little tree counts, and engaging and empowering our people to sustainably use our forests. I think these are all key messages that we need to portray as to the importance of forests. And one of the important things is, Annie, that we need to portray is that we need to emphasize is that this decade, or starting this year, the United Nations General Assembly declared a forest initiative, a global initiative, that this is the decade for forest ecosystem restoration. So all of this shows the importance that the forest sector has, that the forestry has, that restoration has for our livelihoods, for us, for humans, for now and for the future. So all of this concept is being portrayed through the theme that we have, which is forest restoration, a path to recovery and well-being. And it's a path because it is a process that will be a lengthy process. It includes change in culture, change in education, in mindset, different initiatives, capacity building. So all of this encompasses all the key messages that we have, and the importance of maintaining our forest cover and the importance of restoring our forest cover.
Yeah. And that was one of the questions I had. We spoke of the percentage of degradation to the forest, and that you are working to be able to recover, which I guess it means to replant. But explain to me what has led to the degradation, and also a tree doesn't grow overnight. So how long does it take for us to reach the point of recovery?
Okay, degradation basically is when we have a loss, not only in forest cover, but we look at a decrease in soil productivity. In the agriculture sector, we might say that the soil is unproductive. It is not producing the same quality of vegetables as before. We look at the loss of biodiversity. They say there are less deers around running. We have that loss in connectivity. All of this is degradation, and this is caused by us humans. So this is important to consider. Now we need to try to do the reverse, which is restoration. And we're looking at landscape restoration, which actually is increasing what I just mentioned, the soil productivity, through different implementation of climate smart practices, capacity building, improving the systems we have, replanting in our watersheds. All of these are key things that we do as restoration activities. So unfortunately, we humans have caused it to be where it is. We have realized that we cannot continue the way we are, because then at the end, the forest will continue degrading. So we're now taking initiatives for restoration, and two very important actions that the Forest Department is presently doing, Marlene, is that we have, with the support of IUCN, we conducted a restoration opportunity assessment methodology. It is known as the ROAM. And in here, we included stakeholders from all levels, from the indigenous sector, from the private sector, from the public sector, from the ministry sector. And we formed a task force, a round table, and we identified the different areas in our country that are degraded. So by identifying these areas now, we already know what are the opportunities that we have to restore, what are some of the activities that we might need to implement. And this methodology now has led us to a country initiative, whereby we are presently having a consultancy to to develop a strategy called the National Landscape Restoration Actions for Belize. And like I said, this is a guideline as to how we as a country will be implementing restoration practices, at what level, at what areas. We also need to look at the financial involvement or impact that this will have. So these are all actions that we as a Forest Department are leading, but as I said, these are country actions that we have, since we have a multi-sector task force working in these initiatives at the moment.
What about buy-in from other organizations? Let's get Jasmine into the conversation and talk about some of the projects that you have ongoing.
So for Under Red Plus, one of the main things coming in starting this project was understanding exactly where Belize is. What is it that we, activities that we have that contribute to emissions. And so under the project, we've had a series of activities happening. For example, one of the things that we've had to do is do the forest emissions level. We had to have our technicians go in along with the forest department and do exactly as Yanira said, go and find out exactly what is happening on the ground, whether it's agriculture, whether it's tourism, or what kind of reforestation, logging in terms of encroachments from other entities. And so we have had to implement these activities. And it's not just, okay, we go and we just analyze it and say, okay, it's probably this amount or this amount. It's very technical. There are specific calculations, there are trainings that have to be done in order for us to get this information. Along with that, we have had to go into these communities and consult with them, because it's one thing to just say, okay, we want to protect the forest and get carbon credits, but how is it going to impact these communities? We can't just go out and say we're going to protect everything, because then you're going to infringe on persons' rights to utilize these forests, utilize the resources. So one of the things that we've had to do is do a strategic environmental and social assessment, which basically is us going into the communities, find out what the impact is, find out what the benefits are, and then also try and predict what other issues might come about and how to address those when they do come about. And under this, we had a grievance and redress mechanism where persons can go on to our website and complain. If there are issues, if something came up in a consultancy or some issue that they want to bring forward, we had to create a mechanism where persons can go in and do exactly this without feeling that they are being penalized or victimized. And so this is one of the other mechanisms that we were able to implement under this project. In addition, we have been doing the whole general thing that we are trying to do is do the RED strategy. The RED strategy will dictate exactly how we go into phase 2. And so all these components are needed in order for us to develop this RED strategy.
Let me get in a question there, because I think when we talk about our natural resources, and that's a great example there, people think that it's also, if you're restoring forests, you're losing opportunities for things like agriculture or logging. Is that the case? How do you balance restoring our forests as well as maintaining some of the industries that have already been established? Who wants to take that one?
Well, I can just say that, everything that we have been doing, it's not like, oh, okay, Red Plus came about and Belize just jumped on board. It was not that. Belize had plans already in place that it was working on. For example, the Horizon 2010 to 2030, the National Energy Policy, etc., etc. We had so many plans already that we were going to implement. And basically, when the Paris Agreement came about, which we signed on to, we had to come up with national determined contributions to go for that Paris Agreement. And basically, all these plans that we had just fed into that. So the government is not just going to go and shut down everything and say, let's protect. It is working with these plans, with different organizations, with different ministries to implement their plan while contributing to these factors.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a hard thing to balance at times, but I believe Belize also understands that we do need to have that balance in order for us to want to grow economically, but also to do the best approaches when it comes to proper forest management. And that is why the whole REDD+ and the forestry is so key, the collaboration, because one, REDD+ can't function without forestry. And us being able to bring these new technologies and these new approaches, we are able to bring up the forest department to the new technology area where they do forest management. So it's no longer just going and randomly counting trees or the other aspects in which it used to be done. It's more GIS, it's mapping remote, it's putting all these PSPs that they do in a more scientific way, and sorry, not scientific way, that's error in statement, because it always has been
scientific, yeah. More efficient.
Computer.
Yeah.
Putting it in the computer and having a more visual, so that everybody can see exactly what is being done. So, basically these guys can just go and look on GIS and pull it up and say, okay, this is what we're doing, this is what you're going to find there. And, it's so much more of a visual. Yeah. And that is what technology and REDD+ is bringing to the forest department. And so it's all about a balance, like I said. And it's just finding how we have to find it. We can't just say, okay, we're going to just block off everything and protect it. That's not the approach.
It's a balance, yeah. And even in our own spaces, Florencia, maybe we can get you to comment on that. One of the things that is encouraged by the Forest Department, and in fact most environmental agencies everywhere, is about being able to plant in your own yard, in your own area, if you have a farm, so that you contribute to the building of green spaces as well. Tell us a bit about that.
So one of the important things, you mentioned that, and it's important for us to also understand where Belize lies in the whole carbon emission level. Belize is a small country. We're considered one of the smaller countries in terms of what we give off in emissions. Basically, Belize, what we give in the world emissions, what we give is just 0.01% of what is happening globally. So we're basically a bubble guppy in the game when it comes to emissions. But we have so much forest cover for our area, which is remarkable and which is something outstanding for Belize in itself. We should all give ourselves a pat on the back for having such a large forest resource. And so what Belize signed on to when they agreed to be a part of this REDD+ was they are trying to help and understand that we also play a role in ensuring that we help to achieve the 1.3%, 1.5% degrees Celsius decrease that the whole UN is trying to work towards. And basically it's the idea that one poke in fill basket. So you might think that we're not significant enough. But we hardly give anything towards that, so we don't have to worry about it. But it's the idea of, okay, you know what, there's a larger picture and I have to do my part as well. And I think that's really important for us to understand and to applaud Belize in making that step.
Yeah. And from the Forest Department, let's talk about some of the things that will be happening as we begin to commemorate International Forest Day.
Marlene, yes, one of like I said, this is a very important week. It highlights the importance that forests have. Tomorrow, Tuesday, we will be having, again, a segment with you whereby we'll be discussing about wildland fires or forest fires, protection and restoration that we have along with our Forest Department, Forestry Liaison Officer and other stakeholders. On Wednesday, just like Yasmin had mentioned, technology plays a very crucial role in all of this aspect. So we will be having technology and protection as a focus. And on Thursday, we will be having another segment, which will be dealing with wildlife and restoration activities with some of our stakeholders. This will include the biodiversity component. And we couldn't do all of this without having the communities involved. As such, Friday, we will be having forestry and communities
Yeah.
So that is how we will be highlighting the week. But I must mention, Marlene, that from 2012, when this was declared, the Forest Department has constantly been celebrating International Day of Forest. We have been doing symposiums, trivia, tree planting. We have this commitment to improve the greener spaces in our towns and cities. That is where we sign commitments with our different mayors, and we give them the different trees for them to plant, and they decide where to plant it to improve the urban spaces within the area. And so this is an initiative that we have had from 2012 onwards. Yeah. And we will be highlighting it during the course of this month as well. Yeah. Then
on Monday, on the 22nd of March, the Forest Department through our Facebook page will be having a Facebook Live where there will be an interactive session with the public, and you can win prizes and surprises and also learn more based on the theme this year on forest and restoration.
Okay, and just tell me, while you're on Florencia, just why is it important that if I have a space in my yard that I also join in the movement and plant a tree as well?
Because one of the key messages, Marlene, is always every tree counts. And what that means is whether you think that your small orange tree or your small mango tree that you have in your yard is not only just providing you fruits, but I mean, it's providing the basic ecosystem service, which is providing us oxygen, which we all sometimes forget the importance of these trees. So I mean, even just having the planting of anything in your yard, you think it's just one tree, but I mean, every single tree counts. The 61.75% of our forest cover isn't just one tree, you know, it's the total sum of every single tree that leads us to have this forest cover, and we have to really work hard to try and maintain that forest cover as much as we can.
All right. Well, we look forward to hearing and learning more as the week progresses. As Yanira rightly pointed out, we will be having week-long activities focusing specifically on International Forest Day and what Belize is doing to restore and recover our forestry. So, ladies, thank you for setting the backdrop for us today, and we'll continue this conversation very soon.
Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you, too.
All right.
We'll take our commercial break, and when we return, it's to wrap up our show for this morning. Stick around.
Strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us. Then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something. The Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. Stronger together. The Belize Bank. Our country. Your bank.
Both men and women are almost equally infected by the virus that causes COVID-19. However, men seem to have a higher risk of severe infection and of dying from this disease. Research is showing that men are at a higher risk of dying from COVID-19 because men are still socializing and visiting friends. Men do not frequently wash hands with soap and water. A few men do not believe the situation is that serious. Men delay visiting a doctor even when they start to have symptoms like fever, dry cough, and tiredness. Men think wearing a face mask makes them look weak or uncool. And men tend to misuse alcohol, which has a negative effect on the immune and respiratory systems. Let's protect ourselves so that we can protect our families and loved ones. Use a face mask that covers nose, mouth, and chin. Wash your hands with soap and water for at least 40 seconds or use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Practice physical distancing of at least 6 feet. Support men's health and help keep Belize safe. A message from the Pan American Health Organization, World Health Organization, the European Union, and the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Hello. Okay, sure, I'll be there.
Hi, Mommy. When are you coming home? I really miss you.
Hearing the voice of our loved ones can always lift our spirits and make us feel whole again. With Smart's Twice as Nice promotion, prepaid customers who make 5 minutes worth of national calls on Sundays can enjoy 50% off. Top double on all national calls for the rest of the day. Call your loved ones and enjoy half off all day long. Smart, bringing people together.
We're back.
Our first discussion this morning was a rather interesting one. To get the perspective of the Belize National Teachers Union as well as the National Trade Union Congress of Belize on the proposed salary cuts. They have taken a position where it is essentially no to any such action on the part of the government of Belize, not until all other areas or avenues have been explored and exhausted. So that would be the last option in terms of trying to realize the amount of monies that the government wants to be able to either save or to collect in the next 3 years. We're looking at increments being frozen as well over the same period of time, notwithstanding the fact that the first year of increment freeze was recorded in 2019.
they've
so
already done
they've
one,
said, look, we've already made a sacrifice in the first instance, so we can't be going back to this once again as the only means of being able to collect or save on the monies that is needed. So to get their point of view, the way in from the BNTU, for instance, where they are saying, look, we are at a certain place where a lot of the expenses that are incurred by teachers in the conduct of their jobs in terms of being able to purchase certain items or going the extra mile and what have you. And so to propose to take more away from them when they're already footing certain expenses to do their jobs, they're saying, look, that's unfair to us when there are other areas that we can look to in order to be able to generate the monies.
I think what the unions have described before, and this was the second part of our conversation with the unions. Last week we spoke with the PSU and the APSSM. So today we continued with the BNTU and the NTUCB. But the way it has been described, I think, is one of the things that helps to set the tone as to where this conversation may go. I can't say anything with certainty. It's in negotiations amongst unions and government. But the unions see themselves and the proposed salary cuts and increment freeze as a low-hanging fruit. What we were able to draw out today were some of the specifics as to what they're looking at. We know the collection of outstanding revenue, people who haven't paid up on taxes, people who've gotten discounts on taxes, that they should be, those are some of the areas that you can be able to earn more. The issue of the point of sales is one that I think maybe we don't explain it clear enough, but it's talking about people who are not paying GST. Point of sales will give you more accountability that GST is paid as well. So when you go to a store, we all know what happens, you get no receipt, there's most likely no GST. In fact, I would say we can guarantee there's no GST being paid on those sales. That's a loss of revenue for government as well. The allowances, which has been a sticking point for the unions for quite some time. The ministers collect housing allowances, entertainment allowances, and phone allowances. And these are some of the areas that they feel need to be cut as well, given the austerity that is being asked. And let's be honest too, some of these allowances cumulatively are more in monthly salary than some of these public servants may make.
That is true.
So it's a very fair thing that they're looking at. What will be decided is a different story. So the question is where we're going to go from here. As Senator Smith pointed out, the unions have finalized, they stayed up past midnight to be able to finalize the counter proposals. That's probably going to be submitted. Cabinet meets tomorrow. And I'm sure that's on the table because the clock is ticking. The end of the financial year is the end of this month.
And of course, you put that in the context of the pending budget presentation. So all loose ends need to be tied up before or ahead of that particular time, which is next Friday. So you're right. The deadline is quickly upon us or upon the government to be able to finalize its position going forward.
Well, and you know, let's not lose the political part of this as well. This is a test for the new Briceño administration. Having been in opposition for 13 years, most often, as any opposition would, they have sided with the unions on these issues. Now, this is their first battle with the unions who are, I always say, they do their homework, they do their research, and they have the strength of their membership behind them. They're a representative organization. So how will the Briceño administration, this new government, resolve its first battle with the unions? That's also something I know people are watching as well. And while also taking into account the overall economic crisis that we're in and the necessity to cut down on the expenses that the country pays out.
So that was our first conversation. So on a lighter note, International Forest Day is coming up. There is a week-long calendar of events for activities that will be taking place in commemoration of International Forest Day. And our coverage of it continues tomorrow here on Open Your Eyes.
So we're going to be talking about all different aspects of how the forests benefit us. Today we got the overview of the International Forest Day and the organization, Red Plus, and the Forest Department and things that they have been doing so far and the commitment the country has made. As we progress, we'll hear more about some of the innovative programs that are already being rolled out, from sustainable forestry to looking at how they combat forest fires, which that time of year is also coming around. We know we'll start to see some of the forest fires just based on the weather, things that can be done to mitigate those types of impacts on our forestry, and why it's important that we all do our part and play our role.
There we go.
Yeah. So that's all the time we have for today. Remember, if you want to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. Remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.